Welcome to the Microsoft Partner Quick Bytes. This is episode number 13. Allow me to thank Clear Media, Ingram Micro, SmartWorks, TD Synnex, also Arrow, Copaco, and of course Microsoft. This recording is made possible thanks to you, so thank you very much. And also thank you very much, dear subscribers. And if you're not yet subscribed, please subscribe, since we are still aiming for 1,000 subscribers by the end of June, and we still need to go away. So please subscribe and thank you very much for doing so. This is probably also the best way to get notified, to get up to date on the sessions that we are still planning for the next 5 to 6 months, probably another more than 30 sessions, 30 recordings that will be made available here. This recording, recording number 13, is all about Unify Your Data Platform. Unify Your Data Platform is one of the solution plays that is part of the cloud solution area, cloud and AI platforms. And I will explain that a little bit better in a minute. As part of this solution play, there is what I call an SMB Cohort. And I will explain very much with a lot of detail what an SMB cohort is. And it is, at the end of the day, in order to help you to unlock growth with the customer, of course, but most importantly, probably unlock growth for you as a partner going to market and helping customers. So let's get started. I will start with one slide, what all the SMB solution plays are, so that you see exactly that this solution play is one of the many solution plays and that you can actually position it. I will explain how the win formula that has been introduced already in, I think, recording number 3, the win formula for the Unify Your Data Platforms solutions play aligns to MCEM, and I will make sure that you understand how the cohort, the SMB cohorts relate exactly to the win formula. Then I will talk a little bit about the marketing content that is made available for the solution play, and I will most importantly zoom into, at the end of the day, the targeting scenarios. The targeting scenarios. Keep that in mind, that is absolutely the most important topic that I will be covering. Voila, let's get started. A lot of resources will be discussed, and for each of the resources that I will be discussing, there will be an easy URL, and with easy I mean an URL of type aka.ms URL, and these URLs will also be available here below in the description. So at the end of the recording or immediately now, check the recording description here below, and there you'll find a nice overview of all the URLs I'm using. And actually another thing that you might like a lot, if you don't know YouTube yet very much, you can also click here below and click on the chapter so that you can immediately jump to one of the topics that I will be discussing. Okay, the SMB solution plays. So first of all, what you see, top down, there are 3 cloud solution areas. There is AI business solutions, there is cloud and AI platforms, that's the one we will be zooming into, and there is security. The first one, AI business solutions, is actually the combination of Microsoft 365 and Dynamics, or modern work, or what used to be called modern work, and indeed business applications. Security is security. And as you can see, for each cloud solution area, you have what they call solution plays. And solution plays, in a way, relates to the scenarios, the customer scenarios. And that's actually what we will be discussing. You can see for cloud and AI platforms, and cloud and AI platforms is actually the Azure-related cloud solution area. For that solution area, we have actually three solution plays. We will start today with a discussion about the targeting scenarios related to the Unify Your Data Platform. In the next session, I'll do the exact same thing for the migrate and modernize your estate. I might also do a recording about the cohorts or about the targeting scenarios, specifically for the last one, the innovate with Azure AI apps and agents. You might remember the first two are actually the two that Microsoft positions as focus areas for typical small and medium businesses. The last one is actually also an interesting one, but it's typically only positions towards what Microsoft calls today software development companies, or what we used to call independent software vendors. But then again, still, I think it's a very relevant topic also to cover towards SMBs. And that's also the reason why I might do a recording about the targeting scenarios related to that scenario, related to actually that solution play. Okay, that being said, the other thing that I want to do is position actually this session, position actually the topic of cohort lists, the topic of targeting scenarios, is actually the same thing basically, should be seen at the level of listen and consult. So what you see here, I'm not going to discuss that again, is actually the Microsoft customer engagement methodology. Yeah, and the first methodology, the first step in a way in the journey towards working with customers is typically listening and consulting, or in this case is really targeting, identifying the customers that might be interesting to engage with in the sales process. So it typically always starts there. And since Unify Your Data Platform is all about Fabric, and while Fabric, Microsoft Fabric, is such a rich platform, it is important that you know what scenarios, what customer scenarios, targeting scenarios are really relevant. And depending on the targeting scenario, you probably use other assets to convince them, other messaging frameworks to convince them, and that is what we will be doing today. We also touch a little bit on the SMB campaign in a box. Basically, this is about the assets, the marketing assets that you might use in order to reach out to customers in your marketing activities. All the other things I will not be discussing, but I will at some point in time talk, for instance, about the dream demo. I will for sure talk about the Fabric Analyst in a Day workshop that you can do, and I will for sure also talk about the Cloud Accelerate Factory, and actually the umbrella thing which is called Azure Accelerate, that is also actually be covered. But actually the focus is on cohorts, on cohort lists, and on actually what is behind that, the targeting scenarios. Now let's zoom into the campaign, and in order to zoom into the campaign, I invite you to the Microsoft Partner Marketing Center. And there you see the URL that you can use, aka.ms Partner Marketing Center, which will typically lead you to this website. This website might, while you're looking into the recording, look differently. Why? Because Microsoft announced that they will update the Partner Marketing Center early 2026. So that could be already in January. That could of course also be in February, but probably the website will look a little bit different. And maybe also the URL that I'm using here, if you click there on campaigns, you go to the solution area partner marketing campaigns, the global campaigns, might probably also change. However, the aka.ms Partner Marketing Center still will be valid. Yeah. If you go to the campaigns, you will see like an overview of all the global campaigns. And the first thing you see is indeed the solution areas, the cloud solution areas, cloud and AI platforms, AI business solutions, and security. These are the three cloud solution areas. We are talking about the cloud and AI platform solution area, and as part of that solution area we'll be talking about one of the solution plays. Now there's also other campaigns that you can zoom into, and actually the one that is relevant is this one, because this one will show you only the global campaigns, only the global campaigns for small and medium businesses. Whether if you would click on Cloud and AI platforms, you would see more campaigns, also campaigns which are rather, for instance, targeted to enterprises. So let's click on SMB go-to-market campaigns. And as part of that, again, you need to select one of the cloud solution areas. And there, of course, I go to Cloud and AI platforms. Yeah. specifically the SMB content. And then we are where we need to be, because at that page, finally, we'll find the 3 solution plays. And the one we will be zooming into, remember, is the Unify Your Data Platform. Remember that Unify Your Data Platform is actually all about Fabric. Now, let's into the Unify Your Data Platform solution play. And let's see what campaign content is available. And actually on this page, you see actually, what is it? 5 things. And the most important one is the one which is highlighted now. It's what they call the sales guide, or the SMB Cohort sales guide. I will be explaining very much what the cohort is, but it's the sales guide. And this is actually what this session is all about. I've created actually a summary of the full content of the sales guide, and that is what I will be discussing. There is also what I call the partner playbook, the thing which is next to it. This is also including the full sales guide content, but it's absolutely also containing a lot of information about skilling, about designations, about all the Microsoft commercial incentives. So it's actually talking about all the things you can do, all the things you might want to leverage at the end of the day in order to be successful in the context of indeed the 4, as you will see, the 4 targeted scenarios. But actually for now, and actually for most of us, most important information is actually in the sales guide. What you also see there are 2 other things, is first of all an Outlook template, email template that you might want to use, at least you will want to check it out in order to, for instance, send to your customers. It's only available in English, not in Dutch. In French there is a version, but not in Dutch, for instance. And this template allows you to invite customers, for instance, for a webinar about unifying their data platform. It's certainly something that you could use to inspire yourself, to help you come to a good messaging, or use the content, give it to Copilot Chat and ask for a Dutch translation or French translation, and fine-tune it to your specific needs. The same thing actually for the one-pager that you might send along with the email in order to send to your customers, for instance, to invite them to a Fabric webinar. Voila, these things are available. And the other thing that I will be discussing is here next to myself, is actually the pitch deck. It's a quite high level, level 100, as they call it, pitch deck. I'll be summarizing that one too. It's an easy to use thing. And again, what is the sales guide about? It's about resources, to identify, generate interest, and engage customers that fit profiles. Well, these profiles are what I will discuss, certain targeted scenarios. We'll see that. With high propensity, that's a fancy word for what are the chances that these customers will buy, for instance, Fabric in the context of that targeting scenario. So voila, it's resources to identify, generate interest, and engage customers to fit actually certain profiles. Let's get started. Here you have it. That's the first slide of the sales guide. And here you have my summary, my high-level summary of the sales guide. So actually this one-pager for me summarizes perfectly what the sales guide is all about. It's telling you that you need to do 3 things in that sequence. You start by identifying the customers with propensity to deploy Fabric. And in order to do that, we will use what they call customer targeting lists that you typically get from Cloud Ascent. I'm not going to talk too much about Cloud Ascent. When going to Cloud Ascent, you can actually download an Excel file, and in that Excel file you'll find back all your customers, and there you'll see Microsoft for each of the customers telling you in which of the targeting scenarios Microsoft sees them. Now, even if you do not use that Excel file, it is interesting to talk about and to understand the targeting scenarios. And that is what we will be doing today. because this is actually what you will be using as a sales professional and as a marketing professional to use the correct messaging, to leverage the correct resources when talking to a customer. Depending on in which targeting list they should be positioned, depending on which background they have, you should use other resources, other messaging frameworks. Voila. And that's actually what we do. In number 2, then we discussed these assets, the marketing assets that you have available. We will discuss also the value proposition messaging framework that you will have per targeted scenario. And there is a one-pager with conversation starters and discovery questions. Quite interesting page that certainly will help you to start the conversation and most importantly to identify interesting opportunities for Fabric. Okay, let's get started with number 1, and that's where we will be focusing most of our time in. Once more, we talk about targeting scenarios, and a targeting scenario is something to identify customer profiles that most likely will buy Fabric. It's simple. And for each of these targeting scenario, you can get from Microsoft a cohort list by using Cloud Ascent. Even, and I'm not going to discuss that here, even if you are not using Cloud Ascent, still the targeting scenarios is what we'll be focusing on and is what you will be appreciate more. Here immediately, let's zoom in. You see actually to the left the 4 targeting scenarios. And don't worry, I'll have a lot of slides to go in each one in a very detailed way. But here you see already very high level what this is about. The first one is probably the most common one. This is for customers, and in our case, most of our customers, SMB, are in that targeting scenario that have already Power BI. And for them, probably there are also for us, resources that we can use to convince them to attach Fabric to that. And that's what we will be discussing. That is typically customers that have currently today only Power BI, the free version even, the Pro, and of course the premium license, the premium license per user. We'll discuss that. So this is an attached scenario. The second scenario is about customers that might have Power BI, but really are looking into migrating away or upgrading their existing SQL data warehouse to Fabric. Let's say differently, they're looking into reviewing and modernizing their existing data warehouse. And that's again where we will position Fabric. And typically the things that they have is SQL Server Premium, SQL Server Standard calls, and the client access licenses. And this is a migration scenario. And then we have customers that are using Azure. And customers that are already on Azure for many kind of things. And maybe for them, Fabric is the next logical workload. Typically, this is about customers that look in a very strategic way to their data, and that are typically about customers that realize that they need to monetize their data, that they need a cloud data platform. This is actually typically a greenfield opportunity. Customers that are strategically looking into building their data platform. And that's a growth scenario. That's really about customers that are already on Azure, and we want them to use even more Azure and grow the business. And remember from my MCI, my session about incentives, most importantly the partner incentives, that typically today the incentives are very much focused on growth, and not so much on finding new customers, but most importantly is focused on growth. Keep that in mind. And then of course you have customers that are using things like Tableau or Qlik or MicroStrategy, of course, and these customers also might look into an alternative, might look into a change. They might look into the next level basically, and they might also evaluate Fabric as a potential platform to do so. This is about acquiring new customers. Voila. Now what I did do, and that's actually the most interesting part of my presentation, I think. I have been collaborating with Copilot, and I created this table. And what is this table? Actually, the question I asked to Copilot is like, I need a table that compares the four strategic scenarios and compares them from different relevant perspectives. And that is actually the result of that work. So let's do that. I already covered the primary goal of each of the strategic scenarios, but let's discuss again a little bit what a typical customer profile is to start with. Well, actually, for attaching Fabric, this is clearly about customers that are currently using Power BI, the free version, but most probably are using the professional version or even the premium capacity license. Yeah, it's typically about customers that like Power BI but start to hit limitations. We'll discuss the limitations in a moment. That start to hit the limitations of what you can achieve with just Power BI, with just the compute and the storage actually on your desktop. So this is a very typical scenario, and in most cases, all of our customers probably are in that targeting scenario. And in a way, it's also the easiest one, I think, to use. It's the easiest one to position Fabric. If you ask me, every customer that is already using Power BI today is having a need to go to Fabric. We'll discuss that, especially those that are using the Pro version. Yeah? Then the other targeting scenario is customers that have already, typically, for instance, a data warehouse based on SQL Server on premises, or even they did do a rehost, a lift and shift, and they put it in an infrastructure as a service environment like Azure, or they might have even chosen at some point in time for the PaaS option, the platform as a service option, and they actually deployed Synapse SQL Data Warehouse, on Azure. Now, all these customers, all these three scenarios, they are typically a target for us to convince them maybe to go to Fabric. And we will discuss why, typically because they are seeking to modernize and to consolidate, and we'll come back on that. Customers, greenfield customers, it's typically about customers that realize, that are strategically thinking about having a better, a sound foundation for their data. They need a data platform. They might, and they probably are already experimenting and using all kinds of technology stacks and tool chains to manage their data. And they start to realize that they need to consolidate. They start to realize that they need one consistent, comprehensive platform. And maybe not even a PaaS-based platform, but rather a SaaS-based platform. And that's actually why we will position Fabric. And then the last one is the easiest one to understand. It's actually a bit the same thing. Customers are using already some data technology from competitors, and there we will want them to profile. And typically, they are typically sensitive to things like governance, cost, and AI, and we'll discuss that. What are the key triggers? Well, for the first one, again for Power BI customers that are just having Power BI Pro and maybe Premium, the one of the triggers is of course actually that they start to have question about the Premium license to Fabric SKUs. And actually, the reason why the typical Power BI customer at some point in time started to acquire a premium per user license for Power BI is because they did hit typically at some point in time the limitation that we'll be talking about. And these limits can only be fixed by starting to use server-side compute and storage. And that is typically what the premium license did provide. And this is actually what today became Fabric actually. It's actually the full story of service-side capacity, storage, and compute that becomes available as part of the platform. Not just for premium license users, but as you will see, also for users that don't have any license. So, if you are talking with customers that have been paying for pro licenses and have been paying regularly also for premium licenses, they will start to have questions about that, and actually that is a key trigger. Now, the key trigger is actually the second one, is that they start to complain about refresh latency, and they start to complain about how slow things are getting. Why? Because if you're using Power BI on the desktop, you're using Power BI desktop, you're using desktop resources, compute resources and storage resources. And you will hit also the limitation on the number of times that you can do a refresh and things like that. And the more sophisticated your data transformations are, and the more data that you're going to transform, the longer it takes to do these transformations. So that's typically a single where you will want to engage on because of the fact that Fabric is solving all that. It is solving that specifically with Direct Lake. Now, Direct Lake, well, you probably know, being a Power BI guy or girl, that for best performance, you typically need to import data in a semantic model. Yeah, import it in a semantic model, and then you hit actually the limit of 1 gigabyte. But that's actually how you get the fastest models. As an alternative, there is also what they call, it's importing, so you don't work with up-to-date data, and the alternative is direct query. And direct query is really working with actual real-time data, but it's much slower. Direct Lake is actually combining the best of both worlds. It's actually bringing everything in a model, in a semantic model, in the OneLake without having to do any translation anymore, and it is there real time. So Direct Lake is typically what you will want to leverage as part of Fabric to have much better performance and most importantly also real-time information data. And indeed, it's all about sharing data in one place. That is typically also something that customers will want at some point in time. It typically starts with Power BI, it starts with sales data, but then all of a sudden you will want to add more data, and you will want to put everything in OneLake. For customers coming from a SQL data warehouse, on premises or in the cloud, it doesn't matter, SQL server-based data warehouse, they might typically have problems, capacity spikes, and that they have provisioned a certain environment with SQL Server, which works fine for most of the time, but might be not enough, the dimensions of the SKUs and so on, might not enough to cope with the spikes. And they also typically end up complaining about the maintenance overhead on premises or in the cloud. It doesn't matter, especially even if you do it in the cloud with the pass option, you end up being responsible quite a lot to maintain, and they start to have issues with that. They typically need a simpler operational perspective on it. They are looking into a platform that makes these things much more easy to maintain. And it's also typically about reducing the stack sprawl. At some point in time, the executive push to reduce the stack sprawl is typically also very related not only to complexity, but because of complexity, but also, of course, with cost. For customers that are already on Azure and are strategically looking in creating their data platform, greenfield opportunities. It's typically about customers that are looking not just to reporting, not just to data warehousing, they're looking also to things where they can leverage machine learning. They are looking to a platform that can handle live data, streaming data, that can handle batch operations. And most importantly, they are watching it from an Azure perspective because they like Azure. They like what they have in Azure to do their governance. They like Azure because everything is nicely based on Entra ID, and it also helps them to manage cost and so on. And it's done nice. And it's probably one of the reasons, one of the triggers, one of the signals that you can use to position Fabric instead of the customer going to a competitive platform. Customers coming from a competitive platform will probably want to look for a solution that is based on open formats, most importantly Delta. And they might have heard about the semantic model, the data set as Microsoft used to call it in the past. The semantic model and the strength of the semantic model, and especially they are looking into a platform that is really conceived with the best possible AI technology available from Microsoft. Voilà. What are the primary value propositions for the Power BI customers? Clearly, that they are not changing anything. In a way, from a user perspective, it's still, in the beginning at least, the same reports, the same Power BI, but all of a sudden, this Power BI report, for instance, will be much more performant because of the direct lake. And remember, direct lake is the best of both worlds. It's not importing, it is not direct query, it's actually both worlds nicely combined in OneLake with unified storage. And typically, the primary value proposition is very much related to, the building data engineering and pipelines. We already know data engineering a little bit as being a Power BI user because of Power Query and the M language that is being used behind it. But at the end of the day, it is Power Query and the M query that is typically processed on the compute of your computer, your desktop. Yeah. When you go for Fabric, you are using data flows for that. You're actually using service-side compute for that. And that is typically also one of the primary values. And this is typically also what contributes very much to the faster performance, not just direct lake. For customers coming from a SQL Server data warehouse, clearly the primary value proposition is that migrating to Fabric is probably the most easy, the best actually path to migrate to another data warehouse, to a modern data warehouse, since Microsoft is providing a clear migration path to do so. We'll discuss that in a moment. And another value proposition, again, of course, is make it part of one unified platform, providing a unified governance and reduced platform overhead, actually. Not having another platform next to Azure, but having a platform that is actually growing by using one of the things that is available in Azure. For customers already on Azure, their most important value proposition is that they hear from us that they get with Fabric an integrated platform that combines data factory, that's actually the next level next to, let's say, data flows. I'll discuss in a moment. The engineering, the warehousing, the real-time intelligence, the data science. It's actually the platform that brings everything nicely together in a SaaS option. The customer is already on Azure. They are probably using infrastructure as a service. They are probably using platform as a service. They certainly understand the value of SaaS. And they have the option, we could build our data platform using PaaS, but again, if you do so, it has some requirements, some skills requirements. It's not to underestimate, it takes a lot of money also in a way, and SaaS is probably the better option. That's actually the primary value proposition. For customers coming from a competitive platform, clearly it is at the end of the day about DCO. DCO, we will need to convince them, of course, about that from a total cost ownership perspective, that Fabric is probably the way to go. The other thing is that, again, that you have an end-to-end analytics platform. It's providing all kind of means to do analytics, and it brings that together in one very modern platform that has a lot of AI features. That is a very important one. Talking about AI features and talking about Copilot, actually I could have positioned that on the other side for Power BI users. If you need in Power BI Copilot features, that is not a premium thing of Power BI, that is actually what Fabric provides. So you need a Fabric license actually, a capacity license, SKU, and that will then actually bring Copilot into Power BI. Now, what are the anchor workloads and features, the features and things that absolutely need to make part of typically also your first project? Well, first of all, of course, for the Power BI users, make use of direct lake, best of both worlds, real-time data access, always up to date, and as fast as what you already know from smaller data sets typically, but then still do that you import it into the semantic model. It's also very much about OneLake shortcuts. And what is a OneLake shortcut? That's when you have your data elsewhere. It could be in a storage account in Azure. It could also be in an Amazon S3 bucket. And you keep it there. You're not moving it, but you create a shortcut. So the data doesn't move to the OneLake, but it's available in the OneLake as a shortcut. And that is again a very, very convincing feature for a typical Power BI customer, that they can bring into their reporting data that is elsewhere without having to import anything. It stays where it is, and it's available in the reports in whatever you are going to do as part of Fabric. The data flows, I already explained it, is about the fact that what they know as M queries, Power Query, will now run server side, will use compute server side and storage server side. And that is what they call the data flows, and that's already second generation. They can even go a step further by leveraging the data factory pipelines. And as part of your pipelines, you might even use notebooks and Spark and Python code. All of a sudden, you get many more options to do the data transformations and to build actually your semantic models, things that were simply not available to you as a Power BI users. Then for SQL Server Data Warehouse customers, it's very much about the migration assistant. And make sure that you start and leverage the migration assistant. Yes, of course, it's about the Fabric Data Warehouse. And the Fabric Data Warehouse is based on the same technology. So the migration assistant also is probably not having a too hard job to do it. And another very important thing I didn't highlight here is a SQL endpoint compatibility, meaning whatever you migrate to Fabric Data Warehouse stays available through a SQL endpoint and is fully compatible with existing clients that you might have been using for your current data warehouse. So this is certainly a very important thing that you will take with your first project. Then for greenfield customers, it's very much about the data factory. That's a PaaS feature actually that you can also start to use as part of Fabric to create more sophisticated pipelines actually, transformations and so on. It's also about making sure that you start to create a warehouse, not with PaaS, but with the SaaS option, that you start to create a lakehouse, that you start to use real-time intelligence, that you are able to use your data scientist skills in that platform. And one of the things that is not on the list is also the fact that you could spin up a SQL database as a SaaS. Typically, if you wanted to do it, you did need a PaaS, for instance, the managed instance of SQL Server, but here you can actually spin up a SQL database just as a SaaS service by clicking two things and you have one. And of course, the combination with Power BI. For customers coming from a competing platform, Direct Lake is once more is absolutely something that they will like. It's all about performance, and performance combined with open standards, and exactly also again with this concept of shortcuts. You're choosing for a very open platform that based on the semantic model that we know from Power BI brings a lot of nice power. And it's also the platform that you can use for real-time intelligence, for instance, for streaming data. And it's a platform from a governance perspective. And as part of governance, one of the governance topics is things like lifecycle management of your data and lineage, having clear insights on where the data actually comes from. And that's actually typically also a governance topic. Good. What are the prerequisites? Of course, for customers coming from Power BI, they might have, and they probably have a lot of pro licenses. So they know already the concept of sharing reports. But at some point in time, they also started to acquire the premium licenses, especially the premium per user license, which actually stops to exist. And actually what we get is you pay for service side capacity, a Fabric SKU, and then you even do not need any license anymore for some of your users. So some of your users don't need the Pro license anymore. They can still use the free Power BI client or use the browser as a screen to their reports. That's certainly something that is very, very valuable that you will take with your story. Now, of course, if you don't pay, you cannot create reports. For that, you still need the Pro license. So there is some mapping to do, some explanation to do, and it's not too difficult, but it is certainly some pre-work that you need to do. There is also the whole topic about workspaces. Again, customers that were already using the Pro license and were already sharing content and reports and so on, they know the concept of workspace, but now you will start to open it up for multiple more users, and you will probably want to think more about the workspace structure. Related to data refresh patterns, we know Power Query, but now with Fabric we have many more options. And even for the existing M queries that we have today, that we did create with Power Query, we might have better options, better best practices, patterns actually, that we might want to leverage. And also the way we refresh data. We might even use things like I discussed, notebooks and Spark Python code and pipelines. You have patterns, and we need to prepare the customer about that and help them understand where there are better options. For customers coming from a SQL Server data warehouse, clearly make sure that you do your inventory of the existing schemas, the existing data structure, the existing ETLs that you do. Make sure that you understand the possible incompatibilities that you might have when migrating with your SQL. And of course, at some point in time, you will probably use runbooks to define the data, to manipulate the data, to do the actual migration. So you need to plan this DDL, the data definition language and the data manipulation language, typically SQL, to do the actual data migration. So that's pre-work. You need to prepare all that. For customers coming from Azure and they're looking into using Azure also for the basis of their future data platform with Fabric, the SaaS option, it's very important to start with executive sponsorship. And what I actually mean here is all about identify who the stakeholders are for your project, and for each stakeholders understand actually what is important for them, what they want to take out of that investment at the end of the day. Because Fabric is such a rich platform, you can do so many things. It's important to make sure upfront what will be the roadmap, what will be the journey, what will we do, and so that you can later on clearly also justify maybe the extra cost that you're introducing. It's also very much about making sure that you create and reuse or use a landing zone. Microsoft provides specific landing zones for a data platform, both of course the PaaS option, but also if you start to use the SaaS option, it's important to have a start with a good landing zone. For customers that are coming from a competitive platform, a little bit the same story. Make sure that you have a competitive requirement list and not just the full list of all the features of the competitive, but make sure that you identify those features, those things that are really important, so that you also can specify, create the clear success criteria, which is certainly about features, but probably much more about the performance that you're aiming for. Now, once you then do the project, what are the things that you need to make sure that you take with you in the very first implementation to really attain as fast as possible your success? Is of course make sure that you use direct lake. I'm not going to explain it once more. Make sure that you introduce at least one data source through a shortcut. And most importantly, I think, make sure that in the beginning immediately move a refresh heavy model, a refresh heavy transformation that you have today, so that you can easily and perfectly show the win you get by attaching Fabric. For SQL Data Warehouse customers, make sure to use the Migration Assistant. It will also help you to identify where you probably need to refactor. And it will help you also to know where you might fine-tune it for performance. It will also help you to do performance tests. These things are not things that you do in the third or the fourth or the second even project, you do in the first project. For Azure customers looking into a next logical workload, it is very much about setting up a Fabric workspace that immediately also includes a lakehouse and a warehouse, so that they immediately see the value of the SaaS option, and that they realize that that is probably the better option compared to the past option. And make sure that you also immediately include a streaming scenario, because also that is something that is available out of the box. And then demonstrate these end-to-end use cases. That's also probably what we will do for the customers coming from a competitive platform. And by demonstrating end-to-end use cases, you clearly show that Fabric is actually all about realizing value really fast. And yes, of course, it's about bake-offs, and especially again the direct lake. Make sure that you leverage that as much as possible as part of a project, your first project, and also immediately show the power of creating data agents, and how these data agents are easy to create and immediately can be used from within Teams, or can be used from within Copilot Chat, or can be used by other agents that you created with Microsoft Foundry or, for instance, Copilot Studio. If you show that to competing customers, you show really the platform value, and that's typically how Microsoft always wins. What are typically objections or typically risks that you need to address? Yeah, for Power BI users, it is change. Even while nothing changes in the beginning, it's about their same reports that change in the performance. But then, okay, the performance comes because of the Fabric platform, because of the capacity that you will be paying for. And that is certainly a concern. So you need to make sure that you understand what the price is of the SKUs, when you go for one SKU or another SKU, and that they understand actually why they are doing that, and they see also immediately the result. For customers coming from SQL Data Warehouse, an objection is typically, compatibility, fierce for compatibility. And there will be some incompatibilities, but again, the migration assistant will help you to identify them and to mitigate them. The migration itself will come with some downtime, and there is something that you need to address and need to plan for. Of course, it's all about, at some point in time, about performance. So they will have some concerns about the performance and the predictability about that. So you need to address that very early. Customers coming from an Azure world and looking into a strategic decision about their data platform, there make sure that you don't end up with scope creep, because the platform is actually bringing everything in one SKU, and you can end up using maybe a lot of things, maybe the wrong things, not aligned with the executive sponsorship exercise I discussed. So make sure that you have a clear view on what you want to achieve first. Also make sure that you have the people involved in the project have the right skills, because there is some ramp up regarding the skills, especially for related to data engineering, and especially for the newer things like real-time data analysis, streaming actually. And of course, make sure that immediately introduce cost management and cost management discipline. That is important thing. Of course, for competitive customers, there it is all about making sure that the features that are being compared to are exactly the features that are important, and that you can cope with the feature parity claims that probably some of the people that still love what they are using today will use against the platform. Also, these same people need to be retrained, especially also regarding the dashboards and the reports. Yeah, they need to recreate them. It's not like an easy migration path that you might expect from Fabric. That is certainly something they need to do. What are success metrics? Well, clearly, for Power BI users, the immediate success criteria should be, and we need to measure it, KPIs in a way, is refresh time, is query latency, is of course related to the analyst throughput, because you're not working anymore with data that is not up to date. It's real data, real-time data. Another success metric is that you start to see that you have fewer pipelines, let's call it pipelines, outside of Fabric, so that people stop creating their own Power BI queries, Power queries. They still use the tool for doing it, but they are not running the M query, as it is being called, the M language query on the desktop, but they are starting to use actually the Fabric compute for that and the Fabric storage for that. And another one is, of course, the adoption of OneLake shortcuts. The more external data you bring in without actually moving the data in OneLake, that's certainly also a metric that you can use to show that you are successful. Customers coming from SQL Server Data Warehouse, certainly the completed on time is certainly one of them. And again, because of the migration assistance you get from the tooling that Microsoft provides, that should not be too difficult. And again, the query performance, the operational overhead will go down. That is certainly important. For customers, Greenfield customers, it is a time to insight. Greenfield means they don't have anything yet. So they don't have the insight yet. They typically need to be competitive to become future-proof. And make sure that you define the correct KPIs, the correct goals to provide that insight. And yes, they will end up having less tools, less vendors to manage, and that is certainly also a success metric. For competing stacks, it is, of course, once more about the TCO, which is lower. It's certainly about the performance benchmarks that we can show where Microsoft wins with Fabric. And it's all about better governance, and especially also the usage of Copilot, the usage of data agents from Teams, for instance. That's certainly something that you can use as a metric. And then finally, the cross-sell and upsell opportunities. Well, clearly, once customers attach Fabric to Power BI, they can use the more advanced data manipulation capabilities, like of course the data factory-based pipelines, the notebooks, so many things. They can start to think about real-time intelligence. They can leverage data science skills. For machine learning and so on. For customers coming from SQL Server Data Warehouse, clearly they will probably discover Data Factory as a much more modern way to do the pipelines. They will start to evaluate and appreciate real-time insights for telemetry, and of course the Power BI story. For customers coming from Azure, Greenfield customers, it is clearly the fact that they all of a sudden have a platform that is absolutely much more ready for implementing all kinds of AI solutions, industry-specific AI solutions even. And then, of course, again, for competing ones, you could name actually the same story here, but one of them is, again, the real-time insights adoption of the streaming information. So a lot of information, I know, but I think that this is a very valuable exercise I did do with Copilot. And here you see, again, the slide from which I started. What I also want to say here, you can always go to the playbook, not the partner playbook, not the sales guide, but in the partner playbook, you'll see the more complete story on how, as a partner, you can leverage all that, and it even shows you more tooling and more things to leverage. Okay, that was the most important part of my presentation. The rest goes much faster. Leverage customizable assets. This is my summary. And actually what you will see for each targeting scenario, you will see actually all the resources, all the marketing assets for reaching out to customers, but you will also discover that there is not much difference between the links that you will see there. I think more important is to leverage the execution guide that shows you exactly how you can use the campaign in the box assets aligned to your cohort lists to do your campaigns. And then there is the pitch deck, and there you see the URL, the pitch deck. I'm not going to go to the full pitch deck, but this is a really nice summary that it did create. So this is a structure of the pitch deck. And what you see there, first of all, it shows you an overview of the platform. And it's all about four things. The first one is clearly the most important one. The first one is all about unifying your data estate. And that's what you want. Once you unify your data estate by leveraging OneLake, you will transform the data in that OneLake and make it ready for AI solutions. And this will empower everyone with modern analytics and future-proof insights. And all this, of course, with the seamless governance and product. And in the slides, what you will see, each of the topic then will go, first of all, in Unify. It shows you what you have in the platform. I'm not going to discuss that here. Then it shows you what you have in the platform related to number 2, to indeed doing the transformations. And in number 3, it's all about what there is to empower everyone with analytics and insights. So I'm not going to discuss all that. And that's also not necessary, I think, when you're still identifying your customer, you're still trying to convince them to go to the next stage. We're in the listen and consult here, but this is clearly a good starting point. Of course, the last one is about, very much related to the power of Azure as a platform for governance and security. And then one slide on the solution, it's about enabling all possible scenarios. All possible scenarios are enabled with one platform that brings together everything. So even traditional data warehousing can be and are absolutely best implemented based on Fabric, but modern data engineering techniques, modern data integration techniques are absolutely nicely available as part of Fabric. And then to the left, it can connect to, it can migrate, it can move data from whatever data source, but it can also use mirroring, for instance, to mirror data without in near real time, mirror data into OneNote. It can of course use the shortcuts I discussed, where you're not moving anything, where you're not mirroring anything, and then SAP is just another example of something you can, and also Databricks is being shown there. Databricks is typically quite popular for people coming from an academic perspective, from a machine learning and a data scientist perspective, and they typically love Azure Databricks. But what you see in Fabric is that Azure Databricks and Fabric nicely come together. So, and again, that is something that a lot of people will like. Voilà, getting started. This slide probably needs some updating, but the reason why I wanted to put it there is because of the last one, is that you can actually, through this link, start a 60-day free trial of Fabric. That's certainly interesting. Voilà, that is number 2. Number 3 is even simpler. There again, you see an overview of all the key messaging talk, but actually this is actually the same thing as what I discussed in my table. But here you see another way of looking at it. Per targeting scenario, you see the talking points. Well, you see actually the key points to discuss, the key messaging. It's actually a nice summary of what I did do in my table that I showed you previously. So that's the first thing I wanted to show. And then number 4, it's a one-pager. And this one-pager actually shows you the conversation starters, like what are your data challenges? Or do different groups within your organization have access to the same data? Or do different groups use different data sources to make decisions? And like that, you have many interesting questions allowing you to identify opportunities, to catch into certain opportunities, like understand if the company has any plans to implement AI solutions. If they plan to do AI, they need a data platform, and the best and easiest path to data platform is Fabric. And then of course there are the objections handling, the responses. One of the things that you will typically is like, we don't need all that complexity, it's probably also too expensive. Well, that's the whole point about Fabric. We bring actually enterprise-grade data platform technology in a SaaS option where you don't pay for Rolls Royce, you only pay for what you really need. Is probably, especially for SMBs, the best way actually to compete to larger organizations that are leveraging already a data platform. Very, very interesting. Voila. And of course, once you have done that, you need some next steps, and next steps could be like, use the pitch deck I showed that you can download from the URL you see there. There are also sort of some click-through demos that you will, the dream demos that you can leverage. Some of the customers will go immediately to, yes, interesting, I like it. Let's now do the planning and let's start seeing what it would cost and what we will do. And then you have, first of all, the level 200 pitch deck. And the link will not only lead you to the level 200 pitch deck, it will lead you to many other pitch decks, for instance, more related to one of the topics that we covered in the level 100 pitch deck with one slide. There is again the trial, and there is even the Fabric SKU estimator that helps you to do the estimation of the SKU that you need, the compute that you need, and the storage that you need. And last but not least, of course, at some point in time, you'll do the project, and you will want to leverage the things that Microsoft provides as part of Azure Accelerate. Now, if you have a specialization, you can get paid for doing pre-sales. If you don't have a specialization, you simply have a designation. We have post-sales things that you can leverage. I'll talk in my next slide in 1 minute. And then you have, of course, the cloud adoption framework and the well-architected framework. All these things are available through Azure Essentials. And the last slide exactly, and again, the playbook, check the playbook for all the resources. And the last slide is actually about the fact that Azure Accelerate provides us many things, but one of the things is actually the Cloud Accelerate Factory. So if you to the SMB path got to the destination, you can actually use that. And it means that Microsoft will use the migration tooling and do the migration for you. Yeah, you don't need to pay for it. The customer does not need to pay for it. They do it for you. So that's certainly something you will want to leverage. Voila. I think I've discussed everything. So the sales guide is the place to be. Once more, you can always go to the broader story that is available through the playbook. But I think the place to go is to the sales guide. Use my slides, create your slides yourself, create your pitch. And watch my next session that will do the same thing, but for the other solution play, the other very important Azure-related solution play, which is about Azure, the migrate and modernize your IT assets solution play. So thank you very much, and please subscribe so you don't miss any of the next sessions. The next session will probably be available very soon after this session, which is episode number 14, all about the cohorts related to migrating and modernizing your IT estate. Thank you and see you soon. Bye-bye.